How could he?
I installed the camera 3 weeks ago. I wish I'd been wrong. But there she was, in my kitchen wearing my robe, kissing my husband. My name is Tina, and I'm sitting in a hotel room in Denver right now, laptop open, watching my marriage dissolve frame by frame on a surveillance feed. My hand won't stop shaking. I've picked up my phone 6 times in the last hour, ready to call him, ready to scream, ready to demand answers. But I put it down every time. Because the woman I'm watching in that footage, the one who spent 7 years building what she thought was an unbreakable marriage, that woman doesn't exist anymore. He died the moment I pressed play. I'm 34 years old. I'm a forensic accountant, which means I find hidden money for a living. I trace paper trails that people think they've erased. I catch liars who believe they're too smart to get caught. Every day I sit across from people who swear they're innocent, and I show them exactly how I know they're not. I'm meticulous. Detail-oriented. I notice everything. Sharp features, sharper mind, always dressed like I mean business because I do. That's who I am professionally. But personally, I'm the woman who swore she'd never be her mother. I grew up watching my mom stay in a marriage that hollowed her out from the inside. My father cheated. Everyone knew. The neighbors knew. We knew. But mom stayed because that's what you did back then. You stayed for the kids. You stayed for appearances. You stayed because leaving meant admitting you'd wasted years on someone who didn't value you. I watched her shrink year after year, until there was barely anything left of the vibrant woman she used to be. And I made myself a promise when I was 16 years old, sitting at her funeral, looking at a woman who died long before her heart stopped beating. I promised myself I would never, ever be her. So when I married Vincent Harlow 7 years ago, I married him believing he was different. Believing we were different. He's an architect, creative, ambitious, the kind of man who could sketch out a dream and then build it with his own hands. We met at a charity fundraiser. He made me laugh. He listened when I talked about my work, actually listened, asked questions, remembered details. On our 3rd date he told me he wanted to build a life with someone, not just share space with them. I thought I'd found the one person who would prove that my cynicism was wrong, that love didn't have to end in betrayal. 7 years. We've been married for 7 years. And 3 weeks ago, everything started to unravel. It began small. The kind of small that you tell yourself you're imagining. Vincent's phone always face down on the table now when it used to just sit there, unlocked, unguarded. I'd never worried about his phone before. Why would I? But suddenly, every time it buzzed, he'd flip it over before looking, like he was protecting something. Or someone. Then there was the cologne. New cologne. Expensive. A scent I'd never smelled on him before, sitting on our bathroom counter like it had always been there. When I asked him about it, he said his coworker recommended it, said it was time for an upgrade. Reasonable explanation. Totally reasonable. Except I'd never bought him cologne before because he always said he didn't like wearing it. Said it gave him headaches. The gym sessions got longer. Vincent had always worked out, stayed in shape, but suddenly he was gone for 4 hours at a time. 4 hours. I'm a detail person, remember? I started calculating. 45 minutes to drive there. An hour workout. 45 minutes back. That's 2.5 hours maximum. Where were the other 90 minutes going? And then I found the receipt. It was in his jacket pocket. I wasn't snooping, I was literally taking his jacket to the dry cleaner and it fell out. Dinner for 2 at Celestine, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. $273. Wine, appetizers, 2 entrees, dessert. The date on the receipt was from 2 weeks ago, a Thursday night, the same Thursday he told me he was working late on a proposal. When I asked him about it, casual, light, like I was just curious, he barely hesitated. Client dinner, babe. You know how it is. These developers want to be wined and dined before they commit to a project. I had to schmooze a little. Would have invited you, but you were working late too, remember? And I did remember. I had been working late. The memory was right there. But something in my gut twisted anyway because the receipt said 7:30 p.m., and he didn't get home until almost midnight. That's 4.5 hours for dinner. I'm a forensic accountant. I find discrepancies. And these discrepancies were adding up. So I did something I never thought I'd do. Something that made me feel sick even as I clicked the purchase button. I ordered a hidden camera. One of those cameras disguised as a normal object, the kind that people use for home security or to catch package thieves. This one looked exactly like a digital clock. Small, sleek, black face with red numbers. You'd never know it was recording unless you were specifically looking for it. It arrived 4 days before my business trip to Denver. Vincent was at work. I set it up in the living room, angled toward the kitchen and the main hallway, places where people naturally gather in our home. I synced it to my phone, set it to motion-activated recording that would upload directly to my cloud account. The whole setup took maybe 20 minutes. And the entire time I felt like I was betraying him. I felt guilty. Genuinely, deeply guilty. Because what if I was wrong? What if all these little suspicions were just my trauma, my mother's story infecting my own? What if I was about to prove that I was the problem, the paranoid wife who couldn't trust, who saw shadows where there was only light? Vincent deserved better than that. Our marriage deserved better than that. But I couldn't ignore my instincts. That voice in my head, the same voice that catches financial fraud, that spots the inconsistencies in spreadsheets and bank statements, that voice was screaming at me that something was wrong. So I left the camera there. Hidden in plain sight, sitting on the bookshelf between a photo of our wedding day and a plant Vincent always forgot to water. 3 days later, I was in Denver, third day of investigating a major corporate fraud case, sitting in a conference room with lawyers and executives, when my phone buzzed with a notification. Motion detected in your home. My heart stopped. It was 2 in the afternoon. Vincent should have been at work. Our house should have been empty. I stared at that notification for a full minute while someone droned on about financial statements and SEC violations. Then I excused myself. Told them I needed to use the restroom. Walked down the hallway, locked myself in a stall and opened the app. The feed loaded slowly, agonizingly slowly, and then there he was. Vincent. In our living room. But he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him. She was younger than me. Late 20s maybe. Long dark hair, casual clothes, laughing at something he said. And she was comfortable. That's what struck me first. She wasn't a guest. She wasn't someone visiting for the first time. She moved through my space like she'd been there before, like she knew where things were. She touched his arm. Playful. Intimate. They went into the kitchen. My kitchen. I watched them cook together, watched her hand him ingredients, watched him stand behind her while she stirred something on the stove, his arms around her waist. I watched her wearing my apron. I watched them pour wine into the glasses Vincent and I got as wedding gifts. And then I watched them kiss. Not a peck. Not a friendly kiss. A kiss that said this wasn't the first time. A kiss that said they knew each other's mouths, each other's bodies. A kiss that destroyed 7 years in the span of 3 seconds. I don't know how long I sat there in that bathroom stall watching. Minutes. Maybe longer. Someone knocked on the door eventually, asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, just needed a minute. I wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. But I also wasn't surprised. Not really. Because my instincts had been right all along. If you've ever had that moment where your worst fear gets confirmed, where the thing you were desperately hoping wasn't true turns out to be exactly as bad as you imagined, drop a like on this video. And subscribe, because what I did next, Vincent never saw coming. I need you here for the rest of this story. Here's what I want to know from you right now, and I really want you to comment below and tell me honestly, would you have installed that camera? Or would you have just confronted your partner based on suspicion alone? Because I've spent the last 3 weeks questioning whether I violated his privacy or protected myself. Let me know in the comments what you would have done. I didn't call him. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to call Vincent right then. To demand an explanation, to let him hear the rage and hurt in my voice. My finger hovered over his contact for what felt like an eternity. But then something else kicked in. Something colder. More calculated. My forensic accountant brain, the part of me that has built a career on patience and precision, took over. Because here's what I know about catching someone in a lie. You never confront them with partial information. You wait. You gather every piece of evidence. You build an airtight case. And then, when they have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, when every excuse has been preemptively demolished, that's when you strike. So I didn't call him. I went back to that conference room, sat through 3 more hours of depositions and financial reviews, and I smiled and nodded and took notes like my entire world wasn't imploding. When the day finally ended, I went back to my hotel room, ordered room service I couldn't eat, and I opened my laptop. The camera had been recording for 3 days. 3 days of footage I'd been too afraid to watch, too afraid of what I might find. But fear is a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. I needed the truth. All of it. I started from the beginning. Day 1. The day I left for Denver. 6 hours after my flight took off, Vincent came home. Alone. Normal evening. He made himself dinner, watched television, went to bed early. Nothing suspicious. Day 2, same thing. Work, home, normal routine. I almost felt relief creeping in. Maybe that woman was a one-time thing. Maybe I'd caught it early. Then day 3. The day I'd already seen. But I watched it again, this time forcing myself to see the details I'd missed the first time through my shock and tears. The way she touched him. The way he looked at her. This wasn't new. This wasn't awkward or uncertain. This was practiced. Comfortable. This was a relationship. But I needed more than one day. So I did something I should have done earlier. I went back further. The camera had a 2-week cloud storage buffer before it started overwriting old footage. 2 weeks of recordings I hadn't reviewed because I'd been telling myself I was paranoid, that I was overreacting. I wasn't overreacting. The first time she appeared on camera was 11 days ago. A Tuesday afternoon. Vincent came home early, which should have been my first clue because Vincent never comes home early. He's ambitious, driven, usually the last one to leave the office. But there he was at 3 p.m. and 20 minutes later she arrived. They spent 4 hours in my house that day. 4 hours. I fast-forwarded through most of it because I couldn't stomach watching them on my couch, drinking my wine, living in my space like I didn't exist. But I watched enough to know this wasn't their first time together. Not even close. She appeared again 3 days later. Then 2 days after that. Then again. And again. Every time I was at work, every time I had a late meeting, every time I traveled for a case, she was there. In my home. With my husband. I counted. 7 times in 2 weeks. 7 times that I knew of. How many more had there been before I installed the camera? But knowing she existed wasn't enough. I needed to know who she was. I scrubbed through the footage frame by frame, looking for anything that could identify her. And then on day 8 I found it. She'd brought coffee. One of those expensive coffee drinks from the artisan place downtown, the one where they write your name on the cup in neat handwriting. She set it down on the counter and for exactly 4 seconds, the camera caught the side of the cup at just the right angle. Sloan. The handwriting was clear. Distinctive. Sloan. I grabbed my phone and opened Vincent's Instagram. He wasn't a heavy social media user, but he maintained a professional presence, posted photos of his architectural projects, the occasional office event. I scrolled through his following list. 243 people. Colleagues, clients, college friends, family. And there she was. Sloan Whitmore. Her profile was semi-private but I could see enough. Mid-20s, architectural designer, worked at Vincent's firm. Her bio said she joined 8 months ago, fresh from grad school, passionate about sustainable design. Her profile picture showed her at a construction site, hard hat on, big smile, looking like someone's dream of what a young, ambitious professional should look like. 8 months. She'd been at his firm for 8 months. Which meant Vincent had known her for 8 months. Had worked with her every single day for 8 months. How long had they been sleeping together? How many of those late nights at the office were actually late nights with her? I clicked through to her public posts. Not many, maybe a dozen photos. Architecture projects, coffee shops, sunset photos with captions about gratitude and new beginnings. Basic stuff. But then I noticed something. The geotags. Most of her photos were tagged at the firm's office or various construction sites around the city. Normal. Professional. But 3 of her photos, scattered over the past 2 months, were tagged at the same location. A downtown address I didn't recognize. The photos themselves were innocuous. A latte, a window view, a lazy Sunday caption. But that address kept appearing. I opened a new tab and searched the address. It was a luxury apartment building downtown. The kind of place with a doorman, rooftop terrace, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The kind of place that costs $4,000 a month minimum. Why would Sloan, a junior designer fresh out of grad school, have photos geotagged at a luxury apartment building? My forensic brain started connecting dots I didn't want to connect. I logged into our joint bank account. The one Vincent and I had maintained for 7 years. The one we used for mortgage payments and utilities and groceries and everything else that comes with building a life together. I knew every charge on this account. Every recurring payment. Every transaction. I reviewed our statements monthly, kept spreadsheets, tracked our budget meticulously. Except apparently I hadn't been looking closely enough. I pulled up the last 6 months of statements and started searching for anomalies. And there they were, hiding in plain sight among the normal charges. Hotel rooms. Not business trips, those were always on Vincent's corporate card. These were local hotels. The boutique place on 5th Street. The historic hotel near the river. Charges ranging from $200 to $400, appearing every few weeks, always on nights when Vincent had told me he was working late at the office. Then the jewelry purchases. Tiffany's. 3 separate charges over 4 months. $800, $1,200, $1,500. I'd never received jewelry from Vincent. Not since our anniversary 2 years ago, and that had been a simple necklace he'd agonized over choosing. These purchases? I'd never seen them. Never even heard about them. And then I found it. The smoking gun. Monthly charges to something called Lux Urban Rentals. $3,200. Every month. For the past 5 months. I searched the company. Luxury apartment rental service. Short-term and long-term furnished apartments for executives and professionals. I called their customer service line, pretended to be interested in renting, asked about their downtown location. The address matched. The same address from Sloane's geotagged photos. Vincent had rented an apartment. A separate apartment. Under his name only. And he'd been paying for it for 5 months with our joint money. Money I earned just as much as he did. Money that was supposed to be for our future, for the family we talked about starting, for the life we were building together. He wasn't just cheating. He was building a separate life. A whole other existence that didn't include me. I sat there in my hotel room staring at bank statements and social media profiles and surveillance footage, and I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart breaking that had already happened in the bathroom at the conference center. This was something else. This was the foundation of my entire adult life crumbling beneath me. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of believing we were partners. 7 years of planning a future, talking about kids, about growing old together, about all the dreams you share when you think you've found the one person who will never betray you. And he'd been planning his exit strategy for months. Maybe longer. The apartment. The jewelry for another woman. The hotel rooms for afternoons I wasn't supposed to know about. The way Sloane moved through my house like she belonged there. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a drunken error in judgment. This was intentional. Calculated. Sustained. I pulled up more footage. I couldn't help myself. I needed to see the scope of the betrayal. There was a moment captured on day 6, where Vincent was on the phone in the kitchen. I turned up the volume on my laptop, pressed the speaker close to my ear. His voice was soft, intimate. Yeah, she's gone until Friday. You have time. I miss you too. No, she doesn't suspect anything. Tina's always so focused on her cases, she barely notices what I'm doing. We're fine. We're careful. Tina's always so focused on her cases, she barely notices what I'm doing. That's what he thought of me. That I was too busy, too distracted, too consumed by my work to notice my own husband destroying our marriage. And the worst part? He'd been right. For months I hadn't noticed. I'd been so focused on other people's lies, other people's fraud, that I'd missed the fraud happening in my own home. I watched another clip. Sloane and Vincent in the kitchen cooking together, laughing. She said something I couldn't quite hear and he responded when I finally tell her we can stop hiding. I'm just waiting for the right moment. The house is tricky, it's in both our names. I need to figure out how to handle that first. The house. Our house. The house we'd bought together 3 years ago. The first place we'd ever owned, the place where we'd planned to raise children. He was already strategizing how to take it from me. I felt rage then. Pure cold rage. Not the hot, explosive kind. The kind that sharpens your focus, that turns every thought into a weapon. My phone sat next to my laptop. My sister's contact was right there, one tap away. Renee, who'd warned me about Vincent from the beginning, who'd said he was too smooth, too charming, too perfect. Renee, who would drop everything and fly to Denver if I called her right now. Who would tell me exactly what I needed to hear, who would be angry on my behalf, who would hold me while I cried. I picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over her name. But I didn't call. Because what I needed wasn't emotional support. What I needed wasn't someone to validate my pain or tell me everything would be okay. What I needed was a plan. A strategy. A way to ensure that Vincent Harlow didn't get to walk away from this destruction with anything except the consequences of his choices. I'm a forensic accountant. I dismantle lies for a living. I trace money, find hidden assets, expose fraud. I've sent people to prison with nothing but spreadsheets and bank statements. And now I was going to use every single skill I'd ever learned to ensure that my husband understood exactly who he'd betrayed. If you're watching this and you've ever had to become a completely different version of yourself just to survive someone else's betrayal, subscribe to this channel right now. Because what happens next isn't just about catching a cheater. It's about a woman who refused to be destroyed by the person who promised to protect her. Here's my question for you, and I genuinely want to know. If you discovered your partner had been building an entire separate life behind your back, renting secret apartments, buying jewelry for someone else with your shared money, would you confront them immediately or would you investigate first? Tell me in the comments what your first move would be, because I need to know if I'm the only one who went ice cold instead of explosive. I changed my flight. I was supposed to be in Denver until Friday, wrapping up the fraud investigation, presenting findings to the legal team. But Wednesday morning I called my supervisor and told him I had a family emergency. He didn't ask questions. I've never taken emergency leave in 6 years. He just said, "Take care of yourself, Tina," and approved it immediately. I booked a flight that left at noon. I didn't tell Vincent. I didn't text him that I was coming home early, didn't call to let him know there'd been a change of plans. Because I wasn't going home. Not yet. I landed at 4 p.m., collected my luggage and drove straight past our house. Straight past the life I'd built, the home I'd thought was mine. Instead, I checked into a hotel 3 miles away. A nice place, corporate suites, the kind with a kitchenette and a desk and reliable Wi-Fi. The kind of place where I could work. Because that's what this was now. Work. I set up my laptop on the desk, logged into the camera feeds, and I watched. Vincent was still at the office, the house empty. But I didn't have to wait long. At 6:15 p.m. my phone buzzed with a motion alert. Vincent home from work. He dropped his briefcase by the door, loosened his tie, and immediately pulled out his phone. I watched him type, watched him smile at whatever response he got. Then he called someone. I turned up the volume. "Hey beautiful. Yeah, I just got home. She's not back until Friday, we've got the whole evening. Why don't you come over around 7? Book. That pasta thing you like. Yeah. Can't wait either." He hung up and started cleaning. Actually cleaning. Vincent, who usually left dishes in the sink for days, who couldn't remember the last time he vacuumed, was suddenly tidying up our living room. Fluffing pillows. Lighting candles. Opening a bottle of wine to let it breathe. He was preparing a romantic evening. In our home. For another woman. While I watched from a hotel room 3 miles away. Sloane arrived at 7:03. I watched her kiss him at the door, watched them cook together, watched them eat dinner at the table where Vincent and I had shared 1,000 meals. And I took screenshots of every single frame. But I wasn't just watching anymore. I was documenting. Building a case. Because here's what most people don't understand about divorce, especially when significant assets are involved. It's not about who cheated. It's about who can prove what. It's about documentation and evidence and making sure that when everything falls apart you're protected. Thursday morning while Vincent was at work I made my first call. To Catherine Brennan, the best divorce attorney in the city. I'd worked with her firm before on fraud cases, knew her reputation. She was ruthless, thorough, and she didn't lose. I spent 2 hours in her office. I brought everything. The surveillance footage. The bank statements. The evidence of the secret apartment. Screenshots of Sloane's social media. Records of the hotel charges and jewelry purchases. I laid it all out on her conference table like exhibits in a trial. Catherine looked through everything with the kind of calm precision I recognized in myself. When she finished, she looked up at me and said, "You have an airtight case. But we need to move quickly. If he's planning something, we need to be 3 steps ahead." He was right. This wasn't just about catching Vincent anymore. This was about making sure he couldn't destroy me on his way out. First move, protect the assets. Our joint savings account had $68,000. Money we'd been saving for years. Down payment on a bigger house, we'd said. Starting a family fund, we'd called it. Catherine advised me that I had every legal right to withdraw half. So I did. $34,000, transferred to a new account in only my name. Documented. Legal. Traceable. Then the passwords. Every shared account we had, streaming services, utilities, credit cards, I changed every single password. Not to lock him out, but to create a clear record of when I'd taken control of my own financial security. Friday morning I did something that hurt more than I expected. I went to our house while Vincent was at work. I had exactly 3 hours before he usually came home for lunch and I used every minute. I packed the things that mattered. My grandmother's jewelry, the photo albums from my childhood, important documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport. My college diplomas. The first birthday card Vincent ever gave me back when his words still meant something. I packed my clothes, not all of them, just enough that he wouldn't immediately notice they were gone. I packed my laptop files, external hard drives with years of work. And then I installed 2 more cameras. One in the bedroom, hidden inside a decorative box on the dresser. One in the home office, tucked behind books on the shelf. If Vincent was planning something, if he was strategizing, I needed to see it. I was out of the house by 1 p.m. Vincent never knew I'd been there. That night I watched the new camera feeds. And what I captured made everything I'd already discovered look like amateur hour. Vincent and Sloane were in my bedroom. Our bedroom. The room where I'd slept next to him for 7 years. And I'm not going to describe what I saw because you can imagine, and because frankly I don't want to relive it. But I recorded it. Every minute. Because in a divorce, evidence of adultery matters. But what happened after was worse. They were lying in bed and Sloane asked him the question I'd been waiting to hear. When are you going to tell her? Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he said soon. I just need to figure out the right time. The house is in both our names and that complicates things. I'm working on it. Working on it. Like I was a problem to solve. Like our marriage was a business deal gone bad. Sloane pressed him. What does that mean, working on it? Vincent sighed. It means I need to be smart about this. Tina's a forensic accountant. She's good at finding hidden money, understanding financial strategy. If I'm not careful, she'll take me for everything in the divorce. So he knew. He knew I was capable of protecting myself and he was strategizing around it. He continued. I've been talking to a lawyer. Figuring out my options. The house is tricky because we both own it, but I've been documenting things. Her work schedule, how much she travels, how often she's gone. Building a case that she's never here, that she's abandoned the marriage. My blood went cold. Abandoned the marriage. I traveled for work, the same work I'd been doing since before we got married, the same work that paid for half of everything we owned. And he was going to twist that into abandonment. But that wasn't the worst part. Sloane asked, what if she fights you on it? And Vincent said something that made me realize I'd been playing checkers while he'd been playing chess. Then I'll make sure she doesn't have any credibility to fight with. I didn't understand what he meant. Not until 2 days later. I'd been going through the home office camera footage, hours and hours of recordings, watching Vincent work at his desk, take calls, review project plans. Boring stuff mostly. Until Sunday evening. Vincent was on the phone with someone. His voice was low, careful. Yeah, I'm moving forward with it. I need documentation that makes her look like the bad guy here. Can you do that? There was a pause while the person on the other end responded. Vincent continued. Text messages mostly. Make it look like she's been having conversations with someone. Inappropriate conversations. I don't need anything explicit, just enough to establish that she's been emotionally involved with someone else. Can you timestamp them over the past 6 months? Another pause. And I need photos. Photoshop but clean. Her at restaurants with a man, nothing obvious, just enough to create doubt. Yeah, I know it's risky, but if she tries to take me for everything, I need leverage. I need to be able to claim she's the one who destroyed the marriage. I stopped breathing. I actually stopped breathing for a full 10 seconds. Vincent was creating fake evidence. He was manufacturing proof that I had been having an affair. Text messages that didn't exist. Photos of encounters that never happened. He was building an entire false narrative to destroy my credibility, to make sure that when the divorce happened I would be the villain. This wasn't just cheating. This was calculated character assassination. I rewound the footage, played it again, made sure I was hearing correctly. Every word was exactly as horrible as I thought. He was planning to file for divorce first. He was planning to claim I'd abandoned the marriage through my work travel. He was planning to present fabricated evidence that I'd been unfaithful. And he was doing all of this to protect his assets, to make sure he kept the house, kept the money, kept everything, while painting me as the woman who destroyed our marriage. The man I'd married, the man I'd trusted with my entire future, was preparing to annihilate me. I sat in that hotel room and something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, the betrayal, the grief over losing what I thought we had. But underneath all of that was something sharper. Something colder. Rage. Pure, crystallized rage. Because I'm a forensic accountant. Finding hidden money is literally what I do. And Vincent had been sloppy. He thought he was being clever, renting that apartment, transferring funds, building his case. But he'd left trails everywhere. Digital footprints. Bank transactions. Credit card receipts. I spent the next 6 hours doing what I do best. I traced every dollar Vincent had moved in the past year. Every single transaction. And I found accounts I didn't know existed. A separate checking account he'd opened 4 months ago. $15,000, moved in small increments from our joint account. Amounts small enough that I wouldn't notice them individually, but significant when added together. I found transfers to Sloan. Direct deposits to her account, $2,000 here, $3,000 there. He was financially supporting her. Not just buying her jewelry but literally paying her bills. I found charges for a lawyer. Not divorce consultations, those would come later in his plan. These were earlier. Strategic planning sessions. How to protect assets in a divorce. How to establish abandonment. How to manage community property disputes. Vincent had been planning this for at least 6 months. Maybe longer. He thought he was smarter than me. He thought that because I was focused on my work, because I traveled for cases, because I trusted him, that he could outmaneuver me. He was wrong. I downloaded everything. Every transaction. Every hidden account. Every piece of evidence showing financial infidelity. And I sent it all to Catherine, my attorney. Then I did something else. Something that would have seemed paranoid a month ago but now felt absolutely necessary. I documented everything Vincent had said on those camera feeds. Every conversation about filing first, about claiming abandonment, about fabricating evidence. I transcribed it. Timestamped it. Created a file so thorough that no judge would ever question its authenticity. Because if Vincent wanted to play dirty, if he wanted to destroy my reputation to protect his assets, then he was about to learn what happens when you try to con a woman whose entire career is built on exposing cons. He thought he was 3 steps ahead. He had no idea I was already at the finish line waiting for him. If this story is making your blood boil, if you're sitting there thinking about someone who tried to manipulate or gaslight you, subscribe right now. Because the confrontation that's coming isn't just satisfying. It's surgical. And you're going to want to see how a woman who traces fraud for a living dismantles a man who thought he could commit fraud against her. Here's what I need to know from you. If you discovered your partner was not only cheating but actively creating fake evidence to destroy your reputation in a divorce, what would your next move be? Would you confront them immediately, or would you let them think they're winning while you build an airtight case? Tell me in the comments because I want to know if you would have done what I did next. Wednesday evening I sent him a text. Just 5 words that would change everything. Miss you. Want to have dinner together tonight. I was still in the hotel room, still 3 miles from our house, watching the camera feeds on my laptop. I saw his phone light up on the kitchen counter. Watched him pick it up, read the message. And I watched his face change. Panic. Pure, undiluted panic. He immediately called someone. I turned up the volume. Sloan, don't come over tonight. Change of plans. Tina's coming home early. No, I don't know why. She just texted. Yeah, I know we had plans, but I can't risk it. I need you to stay away until I figure out what's going on. He hung up and looked around our house like he was seeing it for the first time. And then he started moving. Fast. I watched him scramble through the living room, grabbing things. A hair tie that wasn't mine, left on the coffee table. A lipstick tube on the bathroom counter. A wine glass with lipstick marks in the sink. He was erasing Sloan from our home, frantically trying to eliminate any evidence that she'd ever been there. He changed the sheets on our bed. Actually stripped them, threw them in the washing machine, put on fresh ones. He emptied the trash cans. He even lit a candle, presumably to cover up any lingering perfume. It would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I texted him back. Be home at 7. Can't wait to see you. 3 little heart emojis. The kind I used to send when they actually meant something. At 6:30 I checked out of the hotel. I drove home slowly, deliberately, giving him time to finish his cleaning, time to compose himself, time to prepare whatever lies he was going to tell me. I wanted him to think he'd succeeded. I wanted him to believe he'd covered his tracks. I pulled into our driveway at exactly 7 p.m., suitcase in hand, looking every bit like the wife returning from a business trip, tired but happy to be home. Vincent opened the door before I could get my keys out. And the performance began. He pulled me into a hug, held me tight, kissed my forehead. Tina, I'm so glad you're home early. I missed you so much. The house isn't the same without you. His voice was warm, genuine sounding. If I didn't know better, if I hadn't spent the last week watching him build a life with someone else, I might have believed him. I smiled, hugged him back, played my role perfectly. I missed you too. I brought wine. Let's celebrate being back together. We went into the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd watched him cook with Sloane 3 days ago. The same kitchen where they'd laughed and touched and kissed. And now here we were, Vincent and I, opening a bottle of wine, pulling out ingredients for dinner, moving around each other like we'd done 1,000 times before. The irony wasn't lost on me. He asked about Denver, about the case, about how the investigation went. I told him, gave him details, talked about depositions and financial statements and all the technical aspects of fraud investigation. And the entire time I watched him relax. Watched him believe that everything was normal, that he'd gotten away with it. We cooked pasta. His specialty. The same dish he'd made for Sloane. I asked him about his week, kept my voice light, casual. So what did you do while I was gone? Anything exciting? Vincent shrugged, didn't miss a beat. Pretty boring, actually. Work was crazy, lots of late nights at the office. Hit the gym a few times. Mostly just quiet evenings here, catching up on shows you don't like watching. He smiled when he said it. Like it was an inside joke. Like he was the devoted husband who'd spent the week missing his wife. I took a sip of wine. Did you miss me? He looked right at me and his eyes were so sincere, so convincing. Every single day, Tina. This house is empty without you. I hate when you travel. It's too quiet. Too lonely. Every single day. This house is empty without you. The same house where he'd been with Sloane at least 4 times in the past week alone. I set down my wine glass. That's interesting. Vincent looked up from the pasta he was stirring. What is? That you felt lonely. Because you didn't seem lonely in the footage. The color drained from his face. Not gradually. Instantly. Like someone had pulled a plug. What footage? I reached into my bag and pulled out my tablet. Pulled up the surveillance app. And I turned the screen toward him. There he was. On our couch. With Sloane. Her head on his shoulder. His arm around her waist. The timestamp from 4 days ago clear in the corner. Vincent stared at the screen. His mouth opened. Closed. No words came out. I swiped to the next video. Vincent and Sloane in the kitchen cooking together. The same meal we were eating right now. Swipe. Vincent and Sloane kissing at our front door. Swipe. Vincent and Sloane in our bedroom. I've been watching for 3 weeks, I said quietly. Every time I was at work. Every time I traveled. Every time you told me you were alone. Vincent's hand was shaking. He set down the spoon. Tina, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear how you explain Sloane Whitmore being in our house, in our bed, wearing my clothes, drinking my wine, while you told me you were lonely. He tried to speak, stumbled over words. It's not, I didn't, she's just a friend from work, we were just. I held up my hand. Don't insult my intelligence more than you already have. I know who she is. I know how long this has been going on. I know about the apartment. The apartment? His voice cracked. The luxury loft downtown. $3,200 a month, paid from our joint account for the past 5 months. Did you think I wouldn't notice? I'm a forensic accountant, Vincent. Finding hidden expenses is literally what I do. Vincent's strategy shifted. I watched it happen in real time. The guilt disappeared, replaced by defensiveness. Anger even. You were spying on me. You put cameras in our house. You don't trust me. And there was. The manipulation. The attempt to make me the villain in his story. I stayed calm. Eerily calm. Because I'd been preparing for this moment for days. I trusted you for 7 years, I said. 7 years of believing you when you said you were working late. 7 years of believing you when you said you were at the gym. 7 years of believing that we were building something real. You spent 8 months proving I shouldn't have trusted you at all. I pulled up more files on my tablet. Bank statements. Screenshots of the secret apartment lease. Credit card charges for hotels and jewelry. Vincent's face went through several emotions. Fear. Then anger again. You're never home. He practically shouted it. I'm here alone all the time while you're off chasing cases across the country. What did you expect me to do? Expected you to do? I set the tablet down carefully. I expected you to be an adult. To communicate. To tell me if you were unhappy instead of renting secret apartments and sleeping with your coworker. I expected you to at least have the decency to file for divorce before you started building a new life. Then his tone changed again. Desperation now. Tina, it was a mistake. A huge mistake. It didn't mean anything. She doesn't mean anything. I laughed. Actually laughed. It came out bitter and sharp. Didn't mean anything? You rented an apartment for her. You bought her jewelry. You've been with her at least a dozen times in the past 3 weeks alone. You cooked her this exact meal we're eating right now. You told her you were going to leave me. Vincent reached for my hand. I pulled it away. We can fix this, he said, and his voice was pleading now. Counseling. Therapy. Whatever you want. I'll end it with her. I'll do anything. Please, Tina. 7 years has to count for something. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And I didn't see the man I married anymore. I saw a stranger. A liar. Someone who'd been willing to destroy everything we'd built because it was convenient. Here's the thing, Vincent. I might have considered that. If you'd come to me 6 months ago and said you were unhappy, if you'd been honest, if you'd given me a chance to save our marriage before you demolished it. But that's not what happened. I pulled out a folder from my bag. Printed documents. Pages and pages of them. His eyes went wide. I also found your plan to divorce me. The fake evidence. The strategy to destroy my reputation. What are you talking about? But his voice was weak. He knew. I opened the folder. Started reading from the transcripts I'd made. Direct quotes from his conversations with Sloane. About claiming I'd abandoned the marriage. About documenting my work travel as evidence. About how the house was tricky because it was in both our names. Then I pulled out the recordings from his home office. His conversation with whoever he'd hired to fabricate evidence against me. Your voice is very clear on this recording, I said. Make it look like she's been having conversations with someone. Inappropriate conversations. Text messages. Photoshopped images of her with another man. Those were your exact words. Vincent went completely still. You were planning to claim I had an affair. You were creating fake evidence to destroy my credibility so you could take everything in the divorce. The house. The money. Everything. While painting me as the woman who ruined our marriage. I slid the entire folder across the table to him. Lawyer consultations from 6 months ago about protecting assets in divorce. Bank statements showing hidden accounts. Transfers to Sloane. Every single piece of your plan, documented and time-stamped. Vincent picked up the papers with shaking hands. He flipped through them. And I watched him realize that there was no way out. No explanation that would work. No manipulation that would land. You can't, he started. This is illegal. You can't record me without my consent. I smiled. Actually, this is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows about the recording, it's completely legal. And these cameras. In my own home. Perfectly legal. My attorney already confirmed it. Your attorney? Catherine Brennan. The best divorce lawyer in the city. I've been working with her for a week. She has copies of everything you're holding right now. Every video. Every bank statement. Every transcript. Every piece of evidence showing that you've been planning to commit fraud, to fabricate evidence, to destroy my reputation to protect your assets. I've also already filed for divorce, I continued. You'll be served tomorrow morning. And just so you know, I've transferred half of our joint savings to a separate account, which is entirely within my legal rights. I've changed passwords on all shared accounts. I've documented every single financial transaction you've made in the past year, including the ones you thought were hidden. Vincent's hands were trembling. He looked up at me and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Fear. Tina, please, he whispered. Don't do this. We can work this out. Work this out. Vincent, you were planning to destroy me. You were creating fake evidence to make me look like an adulterer. You were strategizing how to take everything from me while making me the villain. You don't get to ask me to work this out. I stood up from the table. Left my wine glass there half full. Oh, and one more thing. I've sent all the evidence of your affair with Sloane to HR at your firm. A senior partner sleeping with a junior designer violates company policy. You might want to check your email. I believe they'll be requesting a meeting with you tomorrow. Vincent's face went white. You didn't. I did. Because you didn't just betray me, Vincent. You abused your position of power. You used company resources to facilitate an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. And that has consequences. I picked up my suitcase. The one I'd never actually unpacked. Where are you going? Somewhere that isn't here. The house will be sold as part of the divorce proceedings. I suggest you find a lawyer. A good one. Because mine is going to eviscerate you. If you're watching this and you've ever wanted to see someone who tried to destroy you get exactly what they deserved, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happened next, the aftermath of that confrontation, proved that sometimes justice isn't just sweet. It's absolutely necessary. Here's what I need to know from you. If you had all the evidence, all the power, and your cheating spouse in front of you, would you have stayed calm like I did, or would you have let the rage out? Tell me in the comments how you would have handled this confrontation, because I need to know if my ice-cold approach was the right move or if I should have burned it all down right there in that kitchen. I walked toward the door and Vincent's voice stopped me. Tina, wait. Please. You can't do this. I turned back. He was still sitting at the table, surrounded by the evidence of his own destruction. The printed documents scattered in front of him. The tablet still showing surveillance footage. His half-eaten dinner getting cold. Can't do what, Vincent? Can't protect myself? Can't make sure you don't get to rewrite history and paint yourself as the victim? He stood up, stumbled slightly, caught himself on the edge of the table. You're going to ruin my career. Is that what you want? Revenge? I set my suitcase down. Not because I was staying, but because I needed him to hear this clearly. Your career? Let's talk about your career, Vincent. You're a senior partner at one of the most prestigious architecture firms in the state. You have influence, power, authority over hiring and promotions. And you use that position to start a relationship with Sloan Whitmore, a junior designer who's been at the firm for 8 months. A woman who reports to you, whose career advancement depends on your approval, whose projects you oversee. Vincent opened his mouth to protest. I didn't let him. That's not just cheating, Vincent. That's an abuse of power. It's a violation of every HR policy your firm has. It creates a hostile work environment. It opens the company up to liability. And you knew that. You knew it was wrong, which is why you were so careful to hide it. The secret apartment. The after-hours meetings. The lies. But I didn't. You did. And the evidence proves it. Text messages coordinating when to meet based on office schedules. Emails discussing projects that conveniently required late-night collaboration. Financial records showing you've been paying for her expenses. Catherine, my attorney, she used to work in employment law before she moved to family law. She knows exactly what this looks like. Vincent's voice cracked. They'll fire me. I've worked 15 years to make senior partner. Then you should have thought about that before you slept with a subordinate. Before you rented a secret apartment with joint marital funds. Before you planned to fabricate evidence against me. I picked up my suitcase again. The secret apartment lease proves premeditation, I continued. You didn't just make a mistake, Vincent. You planned this. For months. The financial records show you've been siphoning money into hidden accounts. The fake evidence you were creating, the photoshopped images, the fabricated text messages, that's not just unethical. That could be considered fraud. Depending on how the judge interprets it, you could face serious legal consequences beyond just the divorce. Vincent's legs seemed to give out. He sat back down heavily in his chair. This can't be happening. But it is happening. Because you made choices. A series of deliberate, calculated choices. You chose to cheat. You chose to lie. You chose to abuse your position at work. You chose to plan a divorce strategy that involved destroying my reputation. Every single consequence you're facing right now is the direct result of your own actions. Tina, please. He was begging now. Actually begging. 7 years. Doesn't that mean anything? Don't I get any credit for the good years? I felt something twist in my chest. Not sympathy exactly, but something close to grief. You want to talk about 7 years? Fine. 7 years meant something to me. It meant everything to me. It meant partnership and trust and building a future together. It meant believing that when we said our vows, we actually meant them. It meant thinking I'd found the one person who would never betray me the way I watched my mother get betrayed. I took a breath. You took those 7 years and you made them mean nothing. Not me. Every time you met Sloan at that apartment. Every time you lied about working late. Every time you told her you were planning to leave me. Every time you strategized how to take everything from me in a divorce while destroying my reputation. You made those 7 years meaningless. But I love you, Vincent whispered. No, you don't. You don't destroy someone you love. You don't plan to fabricate evidence against someone you love. You don't steal from someone you love. Love doesn't look like what you did to me. I walked to the counter and took off my wedding ring. The simple platinum band we'd chosen together 7 years ago. I'd worn it every single day since our wedding. Through good days and bad days, through arguments and reconciliations, through everything. I'd never taken it off. Till now. I placed it on the kitchen counter next to his keys and wallet. The small metallic sound it made when it hit the granite was the loudest thing in the room. Vincent stared at it. Then at me. What am I supposed to do now? I don't know, Vincent. And honestly, that's not my problem anymore. You did this to yourself. I'm just making sure the truth comes out. I'm making sure that you don't get to destroy me on your way out the door. He tried one more time. If you go through with this, if you send everything to HR, if you push the divorce, I'll lose everything. I picked up my suitcase for the last time. Good. Then you'll know exactly how I felt watching those surveillance videos. You'll know what it's like to have someone take your entire life and set it on fire. I walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't give him one more second of my time or energy or emotion. My car was in the driveway exactly where I'd left it. I put my suitcase in the trunk, got in the driver's seat and started the engine. And as I pulled away from that house, from that life, from that marriage, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. People ask me now if I regret installing that camera. The answer is no. I don't regret it at all. What I regret is that I needed to. I regret that my instincts were right. I regret that the man I married turned out to be someone I didn't know at all. But the camera, the surveillance, that saved my life. Because without it, Vincent would have executed his plan. He would have filed first, claimed I abandoned him, presented his fake evidence and destroyed me. And I would have been blindsided, unprepared, with no way to prove the truth. They ask if I still love him. That's a complicated question. Maybe part of me always will. You don't just turn off 7 years of feelings overnight. But I love myself more. And that's the difference. I love myself enough to refuse to stay with someone who was actively planning to destroy me. I love myself enough to walk away from a man who saw me as an obstacle instead of a partner. Vincent thought he was smart. He thought he was 3 steps ahead, planning his exit strategy, building his case, creating his evidence. But he forgot something crucial. I'm a forensic accountant. Finding hidden money, tracing lies, exposing fraud, that's what I do. That's my entire career. And he thought he could outsmart me? The divorce was finalized in 4 months. Faster than most because the evidence was so overwhelming that Vincent's attorney advised him not to fight it. The house was sold. We split the proceeds exactly down the middle. I kept everything I was entitled to, every dollar I'd earned, every asset I'd contributed to. The hidden accounts Vincent thought I wouldn't find? Those became Exhibit A through E in the divorce proceedings. Vincent lost his senior partnership. The firm conducted an internal investigation after I submitted the evidence, and they determined that his relationship with Sloan violated multiple company policies. He wasn't fired, but he was demoted. His reputation in the industry took a hit. Word travels fast in professional circles, especially when it involves ethics violations. Sloan transferred to another branch. Different city, fresh start, away from the scandal. I don't know if they're still together. I don't care. That chapter of my life is closed. As for me, I'm in a new city now. Seattle. I took a position with a firm that specializes in high-level corporate fraud investigation. The cases are more complex, more challenging, exactly what I need. I sold most of the furniture from the old house, kept only the pieces that were mine before the marriage. Started completely fresh. And I sleep better than I have in years. People think that's strange. They expect me to be bitter, angry, unable to move on. But here's what they don't understand. The surveillance cameras, the investigation, the meticulous documentation of every lie, that wasn't just about protecting my assets. It was about protecting my truth. It was about making sure that when people asked what happened to my marriage, I could say exactly what happened, with evidence, with proof, with no room for Vincent's version of events to rewrite history. The truth did hurt. Watching those videos hurt. Seeing the man I loved betray me in my own home hurt. Realizing he'd been planning to destroy my reputation hurt. All of it hurt. But the truth also set me free. Free from a marriage that was built on lies. Free from a man who saw me as something to manipulate rather than someone to cherish. Free from the constant doubt and suspicion that was eating away at me before I installed those cameras. Free from wondering if I was crazy, if I was paranoid, if I was the problem. I wasn't the problem. And now I have proof. I'm 34 years old. I'm starting over in a new city with a new job, with a life that's entirely my own. And for the first time since I was 27, since the day I married Vincent, I'm making decisions based only on what I want, what I need, what serves me. My mother stayed in her toxic marriage for decades. She stayed for the kids, for appearances, for all the reasons women are taught to stay. And it killed something inside her. I watched it happen. I promised myself I'd never be her. And I kept that promise. So if you're watching this, if you're in a situation where your instincts are screaming that something's wrong, if you're seeing signs that don't add up, if you're wondering whether you're just paranoid or if there's really something there, trust yourself. Trust your instincts. They're usually right. Document everything. Keep records. Protect yourself. Because if the worst is true, if you're right to be suspicious, you'll need that evidence. Not just for legal proceedings but for your own sanity. To prove to yourself that you weren't imagining it, that you weren't overreacting, that you had every right to protect yourself. And never, ever let someone make you question your worth. Vincent tried to make me believe I was never home, that I was the problem, that I'd driven him to cheat through my own absence. He tried to gaslight me into thinking I was the one destroying our marriage by discovering his affair. But I knew my worth. And that knowledge saved me. The surveillance footage that started this whole story, those cameras that caught Vincent and Sloane in my home, they're still in a storage unit somewhere. Catherine advised me to keep them at least until all legal matters are completely resolved. I haven't watched them since the divorce was finalized. I don't need to. I know what happened. I have closure. And I have myself back. That's worth more than 7 years of a marriage that was rotting from the inside. That's worth more than a house and shared accounts and all the trappings of a life that looked perfect from the outside but was hollow at its core. I'm Tina. I'm a forensic accountant. I find hidden money, expose fraud, trace lies back to their source. And when the biggest fraud in my life turned out to be my own husband, I used every single skill I'd ever learned to protect myself. If that makes me cold, calculating, vindictive, I can live with that. Because the alternative was letting him destroy me. And I refused to be destroyed by someone who promised to protect me. Trust your instincts. Document everything. And never let someone make you question your worth. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight for yourself in ways you never imagined you'd have to, subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your own story, because I know I'm not the only one who's had to become a completely different version of themselves to survive someone else's betrayal. And remember, the truth might hurt. But it also sets you free.